Nathan Cross had faced boardroom wars, hostile takeovers, and billion-dollar negotiations that could collapse with one wrong word, yet none of them unsettled him the way his sister's wedding did. From the 40th floor of the glass tower that bore his name, he could see Seattle's skyline glittering beneath the morning sun, each line of steel and glass sharp and orderly, just as he liked it. But beneath that perfect horizon lurked chaos he couldn't code away, no algorithm to solve the problem of family meddling. Emma's wedding was now less than a week away. His sister, radiant and stubborn, had already made it clear that her happiest day would not be complete unless Nathan showed up with someone on his arm. Worse, their mother Charlotte had taken it upon herself to arrange a parade of ideal women. Caroline from her book club, Jennifer from the country club, Amanda with her family fortune in hotels. All polished, all ambitious, all exactly the type his mother approved of and the type Nathan had learned to avoid. He leaned back in his chair, eyes skimming over lines of code scrolling across one of his monitors, but the numbers blurred into Emma's voice echoing in his mind. "I won't let you hide in corners, Nathan." His family's intentions came from love, he knew, but to him it felt like suffocation. Relationships had always been dangerous territory. His last one, 2 years ago, ended with betrayal that hardened his heart against anything resembling vulnerability. Control was safer. Control was all he had left. Later that morning, Nathan laced up his running shoes and escaped into the cool air of Pike Place Market. The scent of coffee, fish, and sea salt swirled together as he weaved through early vendors setting up their stalls. It was here, in this mess of color and noise, that the unexpected struck. A flyer flapped against a lamppost, half torn but vivid with streaks of blue and silver paint. Belltown Gallery presents New Horizons, curated by Sophia Bennett. Her name landed like a stone in his chest. Sophia. He remembered her from that charity auction months ago. The night chaos erupted when the auctioneer collapsed, and she had stepped in without hesitation. She had guided the room with calm authority, her auburn hair pulled back, her eyes sharp and steady as she turned panic into grace. Nathan had admired her composure, her refusal to be dazzled by the wealthy men who usually drew every gaze. She had been a quiet storm, one he hadn't forgotten despite trying. Now, standing with sweat on his brow and the flyer in his hand, an idea began to take shape. Ridiculous, desperate, and yet, maybe the only way out. That afternoon in his office, the storm gathered again. His co-founder, James Morrison, leaned against the doorway with his usual half-smile. "Press wants to know if you're bringing anyone to Emma's wedding. Stability sells better than code, Nathan. Our stock needs a story of balance, not bachelor drama." Nathan dismissed him with a tight nod, but the pressure gnawed at him. Family on one side, the board on the other, everyone watching, expecting. His empire was built on solving problems, finding loopholes, engineering solutions where none existed. Maybe this, too, required engineering. When the office emptied that evening and the skyline shimmered with twilight, Nathan sat alone at his desk. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. It was absurd, asking a woman he barely knew for such a thing. But Sophia wasn't like the others. She had dignity, independence, a sharpness that would never let his mother's plans swallow her whole. With a deep breath, he began to type, "Dear Miss Bennett, this may be the strangest proposal you've ever received. My sister's wedding is approaching, and I find myself in need of a companion for the eve." The words spilled onto the screen, part confession, part business offer, every sentence straining to sound professional while hiding the quiet ache he barely admitted to himself. His hand trembled slightly as he pressed send. The email shot across the void, impossible to retract. For the first time in years, Nathan Cross had no idea what answer would come back or what storm he had just invited into his carefully ordered life. Certainty, but with hesitation that clung to Nathan like a shadow. The email had been sent, and every hour that passed without a reply stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. He checked his inbox more often than he admitted even to himself, each refresh leaving him with a hollow ache of doubt. Perhaps Sophia Bennett had read his words and laughed before deleting them forever. Perhaps she had shown the message to her colleagues as an example of billionaire arrogance. The man who solved problems with algorithms and logic now found himself powerless against silence. On the third morning, his phone buzzed with a single new email from Sophia Bennett. His pulse jumped. He opened it quickly and read her brief response. She suggested a meeting at the Belltown Gallery to discuss his proposal further. There was no warmth in her tone, but no dismissal either. She had not refused. She had agreed to hear him out. It was enough to send a spark of anticipation through his otherwise ordered day. The gallery was alive with light and color when Nathan arrived that afternoon. Large windows poured sunshine across canvases that bled with fierce strokes of crimson and cobalt. The air smelled faintly of fresh paint and polished wood. Sophia stood near the center, stacking catalogs with a calm grace that belied the storm of thoughts Nathan carried inside him. When she looked up, her green eyes caught him with unsettling clarity, as though she could already read the desperation. He tried to disguise beneath tailored confidence. "Mr. Cross," she said evenly. "What a surprise. Are you interested in the exhibition or in something else?" Her voice was polite but layered with quiet challenge. Nathan cleared his throat, suddenly less certain than he had been in a boardroom filled with investors. "Something else," he admitted. "I came to speak with you about the proposal in my email." Sophia set the catalogs down slowly and crossed her arms. "Then by all means explain again so I can decide whether you are serious or simply amusing yourself at my expense." He told her everything. About his mother's relentless matchmaking, his sister's determination to see him settled, the suffocating expectation that surrounded every family event. He spoke of needing a shield, a partner, even if only for one evening. As the words spilled out, Nathan felt both foolish and strangely liberated. Sophia listened without interruption, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she remained quiet for several moments, then asked calmly, "So you are asking me to pretend to be your wife at this wedding?" "Girlfriend," Nathan corrected quickly, though his voice faltered. "Yes, for one night only. Public appearances, small gestures, nothing more. You would be compensated generously." The silence that followed was thick enough to drown him. Nathan found himself studying her face, the faint furrow of her brow, the way her lips pressed together as she weighed the idea. Finally she spoke. "Mr. Cross, this is without question the most unusual offer I have ever received. But the gallery faces difficult times and the money could help. I will agree on strict conditions. This remains professional, no intimacy beyond what appearances demand, and the boundaries are mine to define." Relief swept through Nathan so strong it left him breathless. "Of course," he said quickly, "absolute boundaries. One night, professional only." She extended her hand, a cool, steady gesture that sealed the arrangement. Their palms met, and for a fraction of a second, a current passed between them as sharp as lightning striking metal. Nathan told himself it was nothing more than nerves, but as he looked into Sophia's eyes, he felt the first tremor of danger, because somewhere in that handshake lay the beginning of something that neither of them had intended, and neither of them would be able to control, a tension that felt almost electric as Nathan waited outside Sophia's apartment on the evening of the wedding. He had imagined her arrival countless times over the last 2 days, but none of his expectations prepared him for the sight that greeted him when the door opened. Sophia stood framed in the golden glow of the hallway light, wearing an emerald silk gown that clung and flowed in all the right places. Her auburn hair fell in soft curls over one shoulder, and her green eyes sparkled with a mixture of confidence and something more fragile hidden underneath. For a moment, Nathan forgot the deal, the rules, the careful boundaries. He could only see her. "You look incredible." He managed his voice lower and rougher than usual. She gave a small, nervous smile, then lifted her chin as though reminding herself of the role she was here to play. "If I'm going to pretend to be the girlfriend of a billionaire CEO, then I should look the part," she said. "Do not worry, Nathan. I can handle the attention." The drive to the Fairmont Olympic Hotel was quiet, except for the hum of the city beyond the windows. Nathan found his thoughts slipping between the present and the future. What if this night went wrong? What if his mother saw through the act? What if Sophia herself decided she could not go through with the performance? He caught himself glancing at her reflection in the glass and felt an unease that had nothing to do with nerves of failure and everything to do with the possibility of wanting more than the agreement allowed. When they arrived at the grand ballroom, the air was thick with music, laughter, and the scent of champagne. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting a glow over silk dresses and tailored suits. As Nathan helped Sophia from the car, he placed a hand at the small of her back. It was meant to look natural, yet the contact sent a rush of warmth through him that made his pulse stutter. "Remember?" she whispered as they approached the reception line. "We have been dating for 3 months. We met at a gallery opening and you were enchanted by my knowledge of contemporary art." He almost laughed at the teasing lilt in her tone, and for the first time that night the weight on his shoulders lifted just a little. Emma rushed toward them, radiant in her gown, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Nathan, you came, and this must be Sophia, the mysterious woman you refused to talk about." Sophia's response was flawless, filled with grace and a warmth that looked effortless. Emma was instantly charmed. Even Oliver the groom kissed Sophia's cheek as though she had been part of their circle for years. Then came Charlotte. Nathan's mother swept forward, her elegance sharp as a blade, her eyes locked on Sophia like a general assessing a new recruit. "And you must be the young woman who has captured my son's heart," she said with a smile that was both genuine and measuring. Sophia took her hand without hesitation and delivered a reply so perfectly balanced between respect and charm that Charlotte's guarded expression softened into delight. The performance continued through the cocktail hour. Sophia conversed easily with strangers, sipping wine while engaging in debates about architecture and art. She laughed at the right moments, defended Nathan against a cutting remark from an old rival, and drew approving glances from relatives who had never seen him this relaxed. Yet behind her poised smile, Nathan noticed flashes of something unpracticed, a real spark when she met his eyes across the room or brushed his sleeve as she leaned close to whisper a joke. The band began to play and guests filled the dance floor. Nathan knew it was expected and asked her to dance, his hand outstretched more formally than he intended. She accepted with a smile, and as they moved in rhythm to the music, he realized how perfectly she fit against him. The silk of her gown whispered under his hand, her perfume was soft and intoxicating, and her laughter when he spun her once lingered in his chest long after the sound faded. The line between pretense and truth blurred further with each step, each glance, each shared smile. And though he reminded himself again and again that this was only an arrangement, Nathan Cross felt the first undeniable surge of something real, something dangerous, something that could not be undone. In the hush of midnight, when the ballroom lights dimmed and the laughter of departing guests echoed down the hotel corridors, Nathan guided Sophia to the car, his hand lingering a moment longer on her back than the role demanded. The city was quiet as they drove through the rain-slicked streets, Seattle's towers reflecting in the puddles like broken glass. The silence between them was not awkward, but charged, like two violins tuned to the same note waiting to be played. Sophia sat with her hands folded on her lap, her emerald gown pooling around her legs, her face half hidden in the shadows of the passing streetlights. She looked out the window as if trying to separate herself from the evening they had just lived, yet Nathan could see the faint curve of a smile tugging at her lips. He wanted to ask what she was thinking, but the words caught in his throat. This was business. This was an act, and yet his pulse betrayed him with every stolen glance. When they reached her building, he stepped out quickly and walked her to the door. The rain had slowed to a mist clinging to the ivy-covered walls of the old brick brownstone. Sophia turned to him, her green eyes reflecting the soft glow of the entrance light. "Well," she said softly, "I suppose this concludes our arrangement." She did not move to step inside, and for a heartbeat, the air between them grew heavy with something unspoken. Nathan swallowed against the urge rising in him to press closer to taste the truth that had shimmered all night beneath their performance. Instead, he lifted her hand and kissed it gently, a gesture both chaste and dangerously intimate. "Thank you, Sophia. You were extraordinary tonight." Her breath caught and she whispered, "You are welcome, Nathan," before slipping inside, leaving him standing alone with the echo of her presence. The next day, his life snapped back into its relentless rhythm of meetings, projections, and investor calls. James Morrison appeared in his office with a file in hand and that familiar smile that never reached his eyes. "The wedding photographs are already circulating," he remarked smoothly. "Everyone is curious about the woman on your arm. You looked stable and grounded, and that is what we need for the press. But be careful, appearances can unravel quickly." Nathan ignored the warning, but inside unease twisted. James was right about one thing. The image of him with Sophia was spreading, and the board had noticed. Stability, they called it. Yet for Nathan, it felt like exposure. Worse still, he could not stop replaying the night. Not the compliments, not the whispered jokes, not even the public dance, but the private moment at her door, when he almost let go of restraint. That evening, as the skyline burned orange with sunset, Nathan sat at his desk, staring at an untouched report. His mind refused to focus. He remembered the warmth of her hand in his, the sound of her laughter, the way she looked at him when she thought no one else was watching. Something inside him whispered that it had not been acting, not entirely. He picked up his phone, his thumb hovering over her name for what felt like hours before finally pressing call. Sophia answered on the third ring, her voice soft but steady. "Hello, this is Sophia." "Hi, it is Nathan," he said. "I know our arrangement was meant to end last night, but I cannot shake the feeling that there is more between us than a performance." The silence on the line stretched tight and fragile before she finally spoke. "Nathan, I am not sure it is wise for us to blur those lines." But her tone held hesitation, not refusal, and his chest tightened with both fear and anticipation. "Let me take you to dinner," he said, his voice low and determined. "Not as my hired date, not for appearances, but as yourself and myself. No contracts. No pretense, just us." Sophia breathed inaudibly on the other end, torn between caution and curiosity. At last she whispered, "One dinner somewhere simple, somewhere real." When the call ended, Nathan leaned back in his chair, a strange mix of triumph and terror coursing through him. He had faced countless risks in his career, but this felt like the most dangerous step of all. He had invited truth into the game, and truth could not be controlled. In a quiet Italian restaurant tucked away on a narrow street where candles flickered in wine bottles and the tables were draped with checkered cloths, Nathan arrived dressed not in a tailored suit, but in dark jeans and a simple shirt. It felt almost like stepping out of his armor and into unfamiliar territory. When Sophia entered wearing a soft blue sweater that deepened the color of her eyes, he realized he preferred this version of her far more than the glamorous figure who had stolen the ballroom's attention. She looked real, approachable, unguarded. Their conversation began cautiously over shared plates of pasta and warm bread. Sophia spoke of her childhood in Portland, her parents, who had been teachers, the summers spent in dusty libraries that birthed her love for art. Nathan listened with a kind of hunger he had not felt in years. When she asked him about his own past, he confessed the weight of becoming the man of the house after their father died, and how every decision since had felt like an obligation, not a choice. As the evening stretched longer, their order came easier. Nathan found himself leaning across the table, his hand brushing hers as if pulled by gravity. Sophia did not pull away. For the first time in years, he felt something blooming in the quiet space between words, something that did not need control or strategy. But peace never lasted long in his world. The very next night, he brought Sophia to a dinner party hosted by James Morrison. The air shimmered with wealth and power, conversations about markets and mergers bouncing across the marble hall. Sophia stood at his side, her elegance undeniable, yet James's eyes glinted with something sharper than curiosity. "So this is the woman who tamed the untamable Nathan Cross," he said with a smile that cut deeper than it appeared. "Lovely, but unexpected. You usually aim higher in society circles." The words hung in the air, poisonous, dressed in velvet. Nathan's jaw tightened, but before he could reply, Sophia did. "Perhaps it is not about aiming higher, but about seeing clearly," she said, her voice calm, her eyes steady on James. A hush rippled through the table, then polite laughter, but the tension had already sunk its teeth into the evening. Later that week, Sophia introduced Nathan to her closest friend, Grace Winters, over coffee. Grace was sharp-eyed and fiercely protective. She studied Nathan with suspicion, her tone edged with warning. "Men like you do not usually stay with women like us," she said. "You have your world and Sophia has hers. Be careful with her heart." Nathan met the warning with quiet resolve, promising more to himself than to Grace that he would prove her wrong. As days turned into weeks, Nathan and Sophia began to weave their lives together in small ways. She invited him to gallery openings, where he learned to see color and texture as more than decoration. He took her on hikes through the Cascade Mountains, where silence carried more weight than conversation. Why? Yet beneath the surface shadows gathered. Rumors whispered through the business press about instability and crossed industries. James pressed harder at board meetings, hinting that distractions in Nathan's personal life might signal weakness. The pressure built like thunder waiting to break, and though Nathan smiled beside Sophia and held her hand in the quiet after long days, a seed of unease had been planted. Something was coming, something that would test whether what they shared was only a fragile flame or a fire strong enough to survive the storm. The sound of rain against Sophia's apartment windows and the weight of unpaid invoices spread across her dining table. The gallery was in crisis. Its primary investor had withdrawn without explanation, leaving her drowning in numbers she could not bend into survival. When Nathan arrived for their dinner date, he found her surrounded by papers, her eyes red from exhaustion. Sophia tried to brush it off, but her voice broke as she explained. 3 months of rent overdue, artists counting on her for shows, creditors pressing at the door. If she could not secure funding quickly, the gallery would close and everything she had fought for would vanish. "How much do you need?" Nathan asked instantly, already reaching for solutions. "Let me cover this. We will settle it later." Her head snapped up, her voice sharp with pride. "No, you cannot just write a check and erase this. If you do that, I will never know if I succeeded because of my own merit or because I let a billionaire rescue me. I cannot lose that part of myself." Nathan froze her refusal, cutting deeper than any boardroom rejection. He wanted to help, wanted to protect, but he saw the fire in her eyes and understood that forcing money into her hands would destroy the fragile trust they had built. He took a slow breath, then said, "If not money, then strategy. Let me help you design a way out that is yours, not mine." They worked side by side through the night, stacks of invoices turning into notes and outlines. Nathan called on his network of entrepreneurs who admired the arts, but had never known how to support them. Sophia envisioned a fundraiser unlike anything Seattle had seen, a fusion of technology and contemporary art, where installations would come alive through interactive projections. Nathan promised to open the doors, but made her swear she would lead the night so her victory would belong to her alone. The event arrived under high ceilings strung with lights. The gallery transformed into a living organism of color, sound, and innovation. Guests whispered with awe as paintings shifted when approached and sculptures pulsed with light synced to the rhythm of footsteps. Nathan moved quietly among the crowd, introducing Sophia to investors and creators, then stepping back to watch her shine. Sophia commanded the night with a mixture of grace and unshakable confidence. She spoke of art not as luxury, but as language, a way to connect communities and ignite imagination. Donations began pouring in, checks signed, pledges whispered. By midnight, the fundraiser had exceeded even her most hopeful projections, enough to secure the gallery for 2 full years. When the last guests drifted away, Sophia stood in the quiet space, her hands trembling with disbelief. "I did it," she whispered. Her eyes glistened as she turned to Nathan. "You gave me the chance, but I won this on my own terms." Nathan smiled with a pride he had not felt even in the moments of his greatest corporate triumphs. "You did," he said softly. "You saved your dream, and you showed me what partnership is supposed to look like." Beneath the glow of fading lights, he kissed her for the first time, not for show, not for pretense, but because the walls between them had finally broken. Her lips met his with the same electricity that had haunted him since their handshake in the gallery. Yet as they pulled apart, breathless, a ripple of unease crept in. Outside in the darkness, a photographer's lens caught the moment. By morning, wit, Spurs would spread across both the art world and the business press, twisting triumph into scandal. And somewhere in a corner office, James Morrison would see those photos and smile, knowing the storm had only just begun. The echo of camera shutters splashed across headlines the next morning. Nathan Cross, billionaire CEO, spotted in passionate embrace with mystery woman. The photo was grainy, but the truth undeniable. It showed Sophia in his arms outside the gallery, her gown flowing in the night, her lips pressed to his. What had been a private victory now became public spectacle. Charlotte called before sunrise, her voice sharp with both concern and curiosity. "Nathan, who is she really? Do not tell me she is just another passing distraction. You know how fragile reputation can be." Emma, however, sent only a single text. "She looks at you the way I always hoped someone would." At the office, the atmosphere turned colder. James Morrison strode into Nathan's glass-walled conference room, holding the newspaper like a weapon. Stability, that was the word I used. "Nathan, this is not stability. This is scandal. Donors pulling out from her gallery event, a potential lawsuit over conflict of interest. The board will not like this." His tone was silky, but his eyes were full of quiet triumph. Sophia, meanwhile, faced her own storm. Bloggers labeled her a gold digger. Whispers spread through Seattle's art circles, accusing her of manipulating the fundraiser with billionaire backing. Artists who had trusted her now looked at her with doubt. Charlotte visited the gallery herself, her elegant heels clicking against the floor. She asked polite questions, but beneath them lay suspicion. Sophia answered with grace, but when the older woman left, Sophia collapsed against the wall, her chest tight with frustration. Late that night, Nathan came to her apartment, finding her surrounded by unanswered calls and half-written statements. He wanted to take her hand, wanted to promise her protection, but she turned away. "Your world is burning into mine," she whispered. "I fought so hard for independence, and now everything I built looks like it belongs to you." He stepped closer, his voice low and rough. "No, Sophia. They are afraid of you, not of me. You stood up to their rules. You refused to be bought. That is what scares them." But suspicion had already burrowed deep. Grace Winters revealed something she had uncovered while digging through event contracts. The investor who pulled funding from the gallery weeks earlier was linked to a shell company quietly tied to James Morrison, and now anonymous threats had appeared on Sophia's phone messages, warning her to stop asking questions or watch her reputation crumble entirely. Fear blended with anger as she showed the messages to Nathan. His jaw tightened, his eyes turning cold as steel. "James is behind this," he muttered. "He has been waiting for a reason to undermine me, and he is using you as the weapon." The night ended with no easy answers, only a heavy silence between them. Sophia stared at the rain streaking her window, while Nathan stood at her side, his hand hovering close but not daring to touch. The line between them felt as fragile as glass. One more crack and it would shatter, and as thunder rolled over the city, a single truth pressed on both of them. The danger was no longer just about family dinners or social gossip. Someone powerful wanted to break them apart and was willing to destroy both their worlds to do it. The city wrapped in fog and tension heavy enough to choke the air. Nathan sat in his penthouse staring at documents scattered across his desk, numbers that did not add up, contracts that seemed designed to collapse. The gallery fundraiser had been a triumph, yet within days rumors twisted it into scandal. Reporters whispered about backroom deals. Anonymous voices claimed Sophia had staged her own crisis just to lure him in. The story was spreading faster than either of them could contain. Sophia, meanwhile, fought her own battle inside the quiet walls of the Belltown Gallery. Artists she had championed now hesitated to commit to future shows, their trust shaken by the storm of gossip. Each phone call felt like another blade slipping between her ribs. Grace Winters, her closest friend, stood by her side, but even she spoke with caution. "You are playing with fire, Sophia. Men like Nathan live in a world where money bends truth. Are you certain you can survive inside it?" That night, Nathan appeared at the gallery after hours, his expression tight with unspoken worry. He set a folder down on her desk and opened it to reveal a trail of shell companies and transfers leading directly to James Morrison. It was proof that James had orchestrated the investor withdrawal that nearly destroyed her gallery. Nathan's voice was low but edged with fury. He is trying to break us apart because if he breaks you, he weakens me. Sophia stared at the papers, her hands trembling. Then she confessed something she had kept hidden since their arrangement began. Before the wedding, someone approached me. They offered money if I would share details about you. I refused. I never took it, but I did not tell you because I feared what it would mean. The words fell like stones into silence, Nathan's heart hammered betrayal slicing through his chest. You kept that from me, he said, his voice controlled but colder than she had ever heard. I built my life on trust and control, Sophia, and you left me blind. Her eyes burned with tears, yet her voice stayed steady. I never sold you out, Nathan. I never would, but I will not apologize for protecting my independence, even from you. The argument flared sharp and painful, each word widening the gulf between them. At last, Sophia turned away, her shoulders rigid. If you cannot believe in me, then maybe James is right. Maybe we are from two different worlds that will never belong together. Nathan left the gallery, his chest hollow, his mind a storm of anger and confusion. Sophia remained alone, staring at the glowing city through the gallery windows, her phone buzzing again with another anonymous message. Stop digging or lose everything. The night closed with both of them broken apart, not by distance, but by doubt. Love had felt possible only days earlier. Now it teetered on the edge of collapse. And somewhere in the dark, James Morrison tightened his grip on the strings of power, smiling as the cracks spread deeper through both their lives. The glow of the city humming like a restless secret, and Sophia's gallery transformed into something it had never been before. The new exhibition was her gamble, her last stand against the storm that threatened to erase everything she had built. The walls pulsed with light and shadow, interactive installations shifting as guests moved through the space. Every corner of the room whispered innovation, yet beneath the art, an unspoken tension coiled tight. Everyone knew the night was more than an exhibition. It was a trial by fire. Nathan arrived in a dark suit, his expression unreadable, his eyes constantly searching for Sophia among the crowd. It had been days since their fight, and the silence between them had been louder than any argument. Still, he came because part of him could not stay away, and because whispers in the business press claimed James Morrison would be attending. James thrived on spectacle, and Nathan knew if his co-founder appeared it would not be to admire art, but to watch destruction. As the crowd thickened, Sophia stepped onto the small stage, her gown simple yet elegant, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. She spoke not of wealth or power, but a vision of how art was the mirror that revealed truth, even when people tried to hide it. Her words held the room like a spell, and when the lights dimmed, the installation bloomed to life. Images flickered across the gallery walls, not just colors, but records, contracts, bank transfers, all stripped of names but arranged into a haunting narrative. The art revealed a pattern of sabotage, shell companies draining support from cultural projects timed to collapse precisely when most vulnerable. Whispers spread through the crowd, shock rippling as they pieced the puzzle together. Nathan's chest tightened. He recognized the documents, the trail he had uncovered. This was not just art, this was evidence crafted into revelation. And then he saw James standing near the back, his smirk fading as the projections continued mapping money flows to a single shadowed source. Sophia's voice cut through the gasps, calm but sharp. Art can be weapon and shield. Tonight it shows us that betrayal hides in plain sight if we dare not look. The lights flared brighter, and the final image froze on the wall. A company name everyone in the room knew belonged to James Morrison. The room erupted in murmurs, cameras flashing, investors whispering. James tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked against the tide of suspicion. Nathan stepped forward, his voice carrying with the weight of command. The patterns are clear, the damage deliberate. This company deserves better than a man who would poison it from within. Security moved toward James as guests shifted away from him, their eyes sharp with judgment. The man who had once seemed untouchable now looked cornered and small. Sophia stood frozen on the stage, her hands trembling not with fear, but with the release of truth finally spoken. Nathan climbed the steps, his gaze locking on hers. In front of everyone, he took her hand, his voice low but steady enough for all to hear. "You were braver than I was. You trusted truth when I chose suspicion. I should have stood with you from the beginning." The crowd hushed as he spoke words no CEO ever dared to speak in public, an admission of fault. Sophia's eyes shimmered with tears, not from weakness but from the weight of finally being seen. In that moment, the scandal that had threatened to destroy them twisted into something else entirely. The gallery had not just survived, it had turned into a stage where lies had burned away and truth had risen like flame. But as the night closed and James was led away, Nathan and Sophia both knew one truth remained hidden between them. Her secret, her identity, the part of her life she had never revealed. And soon it would come to light with the power to either bind them forever or tear them apart for good. In the stillness after chaos, the gallery silent once more, though echoes of that night still lived in every wall. James Morrison was gone, stripped of his power, exposed before the city. Nathan and Sophia had stood together before the world. But when the applause faded and the guests left, an uneasy silence fell between them. Victory had been won, but questions remained. The following morning, Nathan returned to the gallery before it opened, finding Sophia alone among canvases covered in white sheets. She looked tired shadows under her eyes, yet her posture remained unbroken. He moved closer, ready to speak, but she raised her hand, stopping him. "You defended me in front of everyone," she said softly, "and I will never forget that. But there is something I must tell you before this story continues." She led him into a small back room where a single canvas leaned against the wall. She pulled away the covering and Nathan felt the ground shift beneath him. It was a painting he knew intimately, one of his most treasured pieces collected years ago, signed only with the name Eris, the mysterious artist whose work had carried him through nights when loneliness threatened to undo him. He had built entire quiet memories around that art, believing it belonged to someone untouchable, unseen. "Eris was you," he whispered, his voice cracking with disbelief. Sophia nodded, her green eyes brimming with fear and hope. "I kept it secret because I wanted my art judged for what it was, not for who I loved or who I stood beside. When I first met you, I never intended for you to know. But everything has changed." For a long moment, Nathan stood silent, torn open by the revelation. The woman who had become his partner, his defender, his fiercest challenge, was also the voice that had spoken to him through paint and canvas, long before he ever knew her name. All the nights he had stared at her work, searching for meaning, had been nights he was unknowingly searching for her. He stepped forward, his hand cupping her face, his voice low and trembling. "Do you understand what this means, Sophia? I was yours before I even met you." Her tears slipped free and he kissed them away, his heart no longer chained by fear or control. In that quiet room among unfinished canvases, he sank to one knee and opened a small box. "Sophia Bennett, 6 months ago. I asked you to play a part in my life as a stranger. Today I ask you to stay in my life as the woman I love, the woman who has shown me who I truly am. Will you marry me?" Sophia covered her mouth with her hands, her body shaking with emotion. "Yes," she whispered, then stronger. "Yes, Nathan Cross, I will marry you." The following year, they returned to the grand ballroom where their story had begun in deception. But this time, it was truth. Emma stood beside Sophia as matron of honor. Charlotte wept openly, finally seeing her son free of the armor he had worn for so long. As Nathan and Sophia danced to the same song that once blurred the line between performance and reality, they both knew it was no longer pretend. The world outside still whispered, but their love had become a fortress built not on wealth or performance, but on truth, on fire, and on the courage to risk everything. Some stories begin as lies, Nathan thought as he held his wife close, but the greatest ones end in a truth too powerful to ever be broken.